Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Clark Environmental's Fun with the Environment. My name is Jim Clark. I'm going to run solo today. And this episode is going to be about PFAS, past, present, and the future. Let me start off by saying that we're not going to get into the chemistry of these 5,000 different chemicals. We're not going to talk about testing. We're going to tell you about the history. So what are PFAS? PFAS are commonly known as pre- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Usually they're an 8-carbon chain, otherwise known as C8s. To get a better perspective, there are 2 shows out right now, documentary, called The Devil We Know, and then there's also a movie called Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo as attorney Robert Billot. Both of these will tell you the history, where it's coming from, and the different ball players with PFAS. First of all, there's DuPont. Now, DuPont was the creator of Teflon, the non-stick in our pans. Then there's Chemours. Chemours was actually an offshoot of DuPont, and they produced a material called aqueous film forming foam, or AFFF. The other one was Scotchgard's 3M. 3M was the producer of Scotchgard for our clothing. So let's talk about the history of PFAS. Well, in 1938, Roy Plunkett at the DuPont's Jackson Laboratory in Deepwater, New Jersey, accidentally invented polyfluoroethylene, otherwise known as PTFE. After 10 years of research, before it was then introduced by DuPont in 1949 as Teflon. Because of that, in 1985, Mr. Plunkett was named to the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Who knew? Then in 1950, DuPont and 3M knew that PFAS chemicals were what we call bioaccumulative. These were in the body. These bioaccumulative chemicals are known as forever chemicals. They take an awful long time to be expelled from the body. In the 1960s, DuPont and 3M revealed that PFAS chemicals pose a severe health risk and kept it secret from its employees and the public. In the 70s, DuPont scientists say PFAS highly toxic when inhaled. In 1973, the Air Force came out with their report saying the toxic effects of AFFF, otherwise known as aqueous film forming foam, was very harmful for the firefighters in the Air Force. In 1975, DuPont warns 3M about the toxic effect of PFAS in food packaging. Then in 1976, the Navy comes out with a report of the toxic effects of AFFF. Then in 1977, 3M finds PFOS, which is the Scotchgard fabrics, more toxic than previously anticipated. In 1978, 3M concludes that PFOS and PFOA in DuPont's Teflon should be regarded as toxic. In 1979, DuPont survey at the Parkersburg, West Virginia Teflon plants that the employees showed evidence of liver damage. Then in 1981, 3M and DuPont reassigned female workers because studies show damage to eyes of the developing fetuses. In 1984, DuPont detects PFAS in tap water in Little Hocking, Ohio, but does not alert the local water utility. In 1987 and 1989, 3M study finds animals with tumors and elevated cancer rates amongst their workers. In 1990 and 1992, 3M PFOA study finds male workers at higher risk and more likely to die from prostate cancer. In 1991, Army urges Fort Carson to stop using hazardous AFFF. In 1998, 3M scientists find PFAS moves through the food chain and accumulates in the blood. In 2001, Bob Billitt, in Dark Waters, the movie, provides EPA with secret DuPont documents on PFOA and PFAS chemicals in Teflon. In 2005, EPA fines DuPont $10.25 million for failing to report substance risk of injury to human health from PFOA. Then in 2006, EPA brokers a voluntary agreement with DuPont, 3M, Chemours, and other companies to phase out PFOS and PFOA. DuPont was doing up to $25 billion a year in sales. Then in present, let's talk about the present. That's the past where we're coming from. Now let's talk about the present. In 2017, DuPont and spinoff Chemours paid $671 million in the Parkersburg, West Virginia lawsuit. Bucky Bailey, who is one of the subjects in The Devil We Know, his mother was poisoned when she was pregnant with him. He developed a cleft lip, a drooping eye, and only had one nostril. Now let me make sure we understand this. They were making $25 billion a year in sales. 2019, EPA misses self-assigned deadline to set an enforceable legal limit for PFOA and PFOS in drinking water. The provisional standard was 70 parts per trillion, but some states did not like that and went lower. For example, New York, their level was 10 parts per trillion. California and New Jersey, 14 parts per trillion. New Hampshire, Vermont, and Rhode Island went as low as 20 parts per trillion, and Minnesota went to 35 parts per trillion. In 2019, 3M settles $850 million in a Minnesota Scotchgard lawsuit. And just to let you know, 98% of U.S. citizens have these forever chemicals in their blood. Once again, going to present PFAS. PFAS is associated with the following: low fertility, birth defects, suppression of the immune systems, cancers, thyroid disease, and blood disorders. PFAS is used in flame retardants, coating for non-skid cookware, food packaging and wrappers, water repellent for clothes and rugs, dental floss, shampoos and cosmetics, chrome plating, electronic manufacturing, and oil recovery, as well as in paints, varnishes, and sealants. Now, what's the future holding for us 98% that have PFAS in our blood? Well, let's talk about liquids first. Liquids are a long-chain PFOA and PFOS, a C8. Best way to get rid of it is go through activated carbon. The problem that you have is, what do you do with the activated carbon when you're done? The next one is the shorter chain, what they call the Gen X. These are C6. Well, ion exchange resins and reverse osmosis. Once again, you've eliminated from the water. What are you going to do with the solids? AFFF. Well, you can blend with soil and send to hazardous landfills, or you can use high temperature hazardous incinerators to destroy it. Last but not least, there are the soils. We have come up with thermal destruction. So Clark Environmental's plan for PFAS in soil. Well, first of all, you thermally treat the PFAS in soils. What do? You raise the soil in the drum of the burner to 650 degrees, and you vaporize the PFAS. Next, these vapors are oxidized and go to the oxidizer at 15 to 1800 degrees, which destroys these chemicals. The soil comes out as clean for recycling, and the PFASs are destroyed. Most soils where AFFF were used were in firefighting schools. Now let's talk about Florida here. They've done the studies and they found out that 45 firefighting schools were tested and 25 were contaminated. This is only in Florida. The state sites in Florida, 23 were tested, 20 contaminated. Government bases in the state of Florida, 8 contaminated. Dry cleaners, dry cleaners because of the Scotch Guard. 15 dry cleaners were tested and 9 were found to be contaminated. Other sites in the state of Florida include airports, port oil facilities, power companies, and yes, even the entertainment facilities. What are the current Florida regulations? Well, all regulations at this time are all provisional. In groundwater, they've adopted the regs by the EPA and said 70 parts per trillion in groundwater. Cleanup levels. Well, cleanup levels for residential are 1.3 parts per million, and for industrial commercial are 25 parts per million. Now remember, petroleum is at 460 parts per million. That is the conclusion of today's talk on PFAS. Didn't want to alarm you, but I do want to let you know, in my opinion, we have a pandemic going on right now, and this pandemic involves the coronavirus. When you're talking 98% of people in the United States have these PFAS levels in their blood, I think this is a more concerning chemical than the coronavirus. Thank you. As always, if you have any topics, questions, suggestions, whatever, for our podcast, our virtual podcast, please send your information or questions to cei@clarkenv.com. And at the next month's episode, we will try to answer as many as possible, but all will go into a hat to be pulled out for a prize drawing. And like I said, depending upon how generous the boss lady is that month, depends upon how big the prize is. Once again, I'd like to end this by saying special thanks to all essential personnel, the doctors, nurses, police, fire department, for their bravery during these trying times. Hopefully because of them, this pandemic will end sooner than later. And we want to thank from Clark Environmental all of you for your help.